Hello folks, and welcome back to another ship review episode. And in today's review episode, I'm going to be covering the Tier 7 US Battleship, the Colorado. The battleship, with many very humorous nicknames, and is also the nightmare for the majority of US and battleship captains out there. But I would like to show you that the Colorado isn't as bad as her reputation. In fact, if you play the Colorado to her strengths, she's actually a decent ship. What I'll be doing is going over the ship's stats and also point out all the strengths, the weaknesses, as well as recommended modules to get first. Also, I will be talking about captain skills and actual upgrade modules that you put into the upgrade slots. Then I'm going to show you some gameplay, and while I'm doing that, I'll explain some of the tips and tricks that you can use to make the ship work for you. So, without much further hesitation, let's take a look at this underestimated Tier 7 US battleship. Let's start off with the stock hull Colorado, and I have to say the stock hull Colorado with the stock engine is probably one of the most painful things in the game. So I would really recommend that you use whatever free experience you've got to try to get through the hull as quickly as possible, and if you have enough, get the engine as well. Getting the two upgrades will save your sanity, and here's the reason why. The stock hull of the Colorado has basically no anti-aircraft guns to speak of whatsoever, and at Tier 7, you're just inviting yourself to be the biggest airplane torpedo bomber target out there, so it's not a good thing there. That's the first problem. Second, if the planes do come after you, and they do drop torpedoes on you, you can't dodge anything, and you can't even dodge ahead of time because your rudder shift time is a dismal 20.8 seconds, and your ship just doesn't turn. I mean, my first battle with the Colorado, I just was the worst thing I have ever experienced, and I was like, whoa, okay, I got at least free XP my way through the hull, because that hull was brutal. And also one more thing, and that's also gonna hurt the stock hull Colorado, is that the shells for its main guns, it uses less powerful shells. They do less damage, and to the best of my knowledge, and this is not confirmed yet, to the best of my knowledge, they don't have as much penetration as the shells you get with the upgraded hulls. So get rid of the stock hull and the stock engine as quickly as you can. This is the phase where the Colorado is a living hell. But once you get through the stage, the B and C hulls is where things get really interesting. So let's start there. The B hull of the Colorado is actually not that bad, assuming you play it to the ship's strength. So let's take a look at the stats first before I go over the C hull and of course the modules and everything else. First up is survivability. Colorado's HP with both the B and C hulls is 50,100. This is not a lot of HP for a Tier 7 battleship. In fact, the Nagato, the Japanese Tier 7 battleship, when fully upgraded, has almost 15,000 more HP than the Colorado does. The Colorado I did find to have reasonably good armor. It's not fantastic against really the higher tier stuff, but against equal tier and below, her armor is actually quite good, and she is able to take quite a beating from enemy ships. The Colorado does come with an option of either having a fighter scout or having a scout plane. Scout plane gives better range, the fighter scout protects you, and I would actually prefer to take the fighter scout because bombers are still kind of annoying, and you do want to have that extra little bit of firepower against them. Not only that, but to disrupt their attacks is fantastic. Let's take a look at the main guns, because that's where a lot of people have issues with the Colorado. The Colorado, without the fire control system module upgrade, ranges out to 15.2 kilometers. That is not a lot of range for the main guns on a battleship. If you look at the actual guns, they fire 1.7 rounds a minute. That means you're able to get off roughly one salvo every 35 seconds or so. They turn not that fast at 60 seconds, and the dispersion is rough. 212 meter dispersion at only 15.2 kilometers. So that's not really that good. And of course, once you actually get the upgraded modules, which is this gunfire control system module here, you'll see that while the range goes up to 16.7 kilometers, the dispersion increases to 227 meters. So this is definitely one of the major weak parts of this particular Colorado, but I will show you how to mitigate this potential issue. Alright, let's continue taking a look at these guns here. The main difference between the stock hull and the B and C hulls is actually in the AP shells. The upgraded B and C hulls get the 406mm AP Mark V shells. These do more damage, and to the best of my knowledge, and from my actual experience in game, they do seem to penetrate a bit better than the stock hull's shells. So that is definitely a positive for this particular hull upgrade, and that's why you should get it as soon as possible. Secondary guns, nothing really special to talk about there. The Colorado does come with a pretty decent set of secondary guns, although they're only 127 millimeters, so with destroyers they can finish them off, but don't expect your secondaries to just outright kill a destroyer. The Colorado shines in terms of anti-aircraft. That is the one part of the Colorado that is fantastic. The B hull is still kind of average though when it comes to AA defense, with 20mm, 28mm, and 127mm AA guns. But when you upgrade to the C hull, the AA defense really shoots up, and I'll show you that in a minute. The AA on the B hull is okay, and if you've got the captain skills for AA, it's usable and it can defend you against at least lower tier carriers. So tier 5, tier 6, other carriers that you could potentially run into battles with, you can defend yourself against those. Although higher tier carriers, you do really need to get the hull upgrade for that. In terms of maneuverability, you really gotta get that engine, because once you get the engine, the Colorado speed goes from a pretty dismal 18.9 knots to a pretty reasonable 21.4, which means that while she isn't going anywhere fast, she can at least get going. The good thing about the Colorado is the turning circle radius is only 640 meters, and once you have the upgraded hulls and you also get the turning module, the rudder shift time drops down to approximately 12 seconds. Which means that once you get the upgraded hull, the Colorado finally can actually turn reasonably well. The concealment of the Colorado on the surface is 16.7 kilometers and air detectability is 11.5. Once you slap on the camouflage, it drops down a little bit more to 16.2 for the surface and 11.5 in the air. This number doesn't seem that important right away, but when you factor in the fact that the main guns of the Colorado don't have a lot of range, this is actually a really important number, because if you have the stock fire control module, you only have 15.2 kilometer range of the guns, but you're spotted even with camo at 16.2, which means there's another 1,000 meters that you got to close down before you're even able to shoot at all. And that's an issue. So what you really need to do is actually get this gun fire control system here, so that at least your range goes up to 16.7, giving you a chance to fire before you're actually spotted. However, because the Colorado has these disadvantages when it comes to its main guns, a lot of people are really tempted to quickly go to their module upgrades here and purchase this gun fire control system modification 1. And I've got to stress that this is not a good module to take. And I actually made the mistake here where I went ahead and I took this module first. It does put my range up to about 19-ish kilometers, which is actually decent, but the problem is, at that range, the dispersion is so bad, the chances of you actually hitting stuff reliably is really low. Not only that, but the other problem I found is that with the module and with my guns being capable of going to that range, I had this tendency of just firing at longer ranges. And that's really not where the Colorado shines. The Colorado is the true definition of a brawler. You've got to get close and you've got to punish people with your really powerful guns and use your armor to protect you. She is not meant to engage in a long distance duel. So, in terms of upgrade modules, here's what I recommend. In the very first slot, I would recommend getting either a main battery modification 1, or if you really want to protect your AA guns, you could always get AA guns modification 1 as well. These two, not really a huge difference, although weirdly enough, I still would say get main battery modification 1, because I did find that the forward guns of the Colorado, when angled, had a tendency of being knocked out or being disabled quite frequently, so I would still recommend getting that module. In the second slot, get the AA guns modification 2. The Colorado's strength lies in its AA. Make yourself extremely difficult to bomb by aircraft. That is going to be something that's going to allow you to close that range and get into that brawling distance and actually engage in a pissing match with other battleships, or cruisers, whichever one you would prefer to shoot at. In the third slot, I would definitely say get damage control system modification 1. Again, anything to reduce flooding or fire is going to help. And finally, in the fourth slot, I would say get steering gears modification 2, because like I said, getting your rudder shift time down to about 12 seconds is pretty good for a battleship. In terms of captain skills, here's what I recommend for the Colorado. In the very first row, I would recommend getting basics of survivability. you are going to probably get set on fire quite a few times just because you are a nice slow target, and cruisers really like to shoot nice slow targets and set you on fire. So having this skill to reduce the time to repair from fire is very, very beneficial. On the second row, I would definitely say get Expert Marksman. Your turrets traverse way too slowly without the skill, so getting it is at least going to help make your guns turn a little bit faster. The third row is where you actually have choices. You can either go with High Alert, which helps because it reduces the reload time of the damage control party consumable, but you can also get Superintendent because you might want to get that extra repair party consumable charge. Why? Because I found in my battles there are times where I really wish I had that third charge, because the battleship really has a lot less HP than, let's say, a Nagato, as I mentioned earlier. So this Superintendent skill should really help. In the fourth row, get Advanced Firing Training. Again, boost up that AA because it is going to save you from airplanes. Probably save the ships around you and your team as well from air attack, so definitely get this. In terms of the fifth row, I never actually got a chance to get it, but I would still say if you had a choice to get anything here on the last row, you might want to consider something like Concealment Expert. Hey, your battleship doesn't have a lot of range. Get close, stay invisible, and pop up and surprise people. So, definitely get either this skill, or if you really want, you can always get Jack of all trades. That's also a viable skill. Though I didn't really find that much use for, well, at least I haven't thought of much use for preventative maintenance, although I did mention earlier that the forward gun does seem to get disabled quite a bit, even with that module. So this is something that you can consider as well. If you don't want any of the fifth row skills, you can always go back and get more of the skills in the earlier tiers, including basic firing training. That could be really useful, or just get Superintendent and High Alert. Both of those are really, really, really good skills to get. So do consider that the skills, there is some variability for the Colorado, but if you only have as many skills as I had here, which is basically 4 skills, then this is probably a very, very good bet. Alright, one more thing, and this is me covering the difference with the Sea Hull. The Sea Hull, as you can tell, loses 2 secondary gun turrets, but it gains a ton, quite a bit of AA. So this is definitely something for you to get if you are suffering quite a bit of air attack in the Colorado. Sea Hull, gonna save your life. Otherwise, if you don't feel like you're under attack much from the air, then you can actually skip that and save yourself 1.9 million credits. Also, for the exterior camo paint, do get this particular camo paint. Again, get that detectability down so you can sneak into range and you can pummel people. So, I've sort of gone over all the stats of the Colorado. Let's take a look at some gameplay, and I'll point out how the Colorado should be played and how you can actually accomplish reasonably good results with this particular ship. In the event that Matchmaker decides to match you in a Colorado against lower tier battleships, say tier 5, you're going to have an absolute field day with the enemy team, because your armor is most likely going to be able to withstand most of their shells if you're angled, but their armor can't resist your shells. Yes, angling does help, but you can still do significant amounts of damage, even just penetration. Furthermore, if the matchmaker decides to put you onto a map, like for example Solomon Islands, where there is plenty of cover, you can get close to things real easy. And in this particular case, as you can see there, I closed approximately 10 kilometers with that New York, 1 salvo in, 17,000 damage, which is quite substantial at this tier. The other thing is, once you get to a close enough range, say around 10 kilometers, you'll notice that yes, there's still dispersion. Yes, the dispersion still isn't that great, but it is better. You still see the shells kind of start to cluster together, coming together, getting closer together, allowing you to at least land more shells and do more damage. The other thing that's great about the Colorado is that at the lower tiers, your 16-inch shells, even if they don't do citadel hits, they just do penetration, can still do tremendous amounts of damage. There you go, those 4 hits, 10,000 damage. Which is great because, with the dispersion, you're not always going to get the citadel hits that you're looking for. The other thing that I've sort of found out about this Colorado is that the ideal engagement range for a Colorado is somewhere in the range of around 10 kilometers, plus minus a little bit there. At around 10 kilometers, I find that the Colorado has good enough dispersion to get a lot of its shells on target, but it's also at a range where you can still take evasive maneuvers, you can still angle, you can still do those kinds of things. So I do think that's kind of the best range to engage with the Colorado. Yes, you can also engage out to the maximum, which is around 16-ish kilometers. You can engage there, but dispersion is a little bit wackier at that range. So you do want to get a little bit closer. And Colorado does good when you're able to close the range. The one thing that the Colorado does have to deal with and does have to worry about when it closes the range is cruisers. Cruisers are unbelievably annoying for battleships. The amount of HE damage they can output on you is utterly crazy, in my opinion, and I still think that HE is broken. So one of the things you will probably have to put priority on when you're in a Colorado, when you get up close, is take out the cruisers. There you go. See, this New York is about 14 kilometers away, and you start to see that dispersion. See it? And that dispersion starts to spread the shells out a little bit more, and things start to get a little bit harder to hit. So that's why I'm like, the ideal engagement range is probably going to be in that 10-ish kilometer zone. You'll see that even as I come out here, there's going to be battleships like the New York and stuff, and they're closer, and I should be able to engage them. But you will see that when I see the cruiser, because there is still an Atlanta there, when I do see the cruiser, I'm going to shift my attention to that cruiser. I am going to be able to bounce the majority of battleship shells, but those cruiser shells, if you look at the amount of damage they're able to do, they're very, very, very consistent amounts of damage. I could shoot that New York, I could kill him, but that cruiser, just watch the amount of damage. Okay, so there you go, my salvo there, 3 hits, 6,000 damage. But when the Atlanta switches his HE to me, watch the damage that pops out. He's able to get very consistent, couple hundred damage a hit, like 500-600 damage a hit. And that's tremendous, because at the rate of fire the Atlanta has, you can take that 6,000 damage in a matter of a few seconds almost. So that is definitely something to keep in mind. As you can see, I've angled myself to the battleships, and once I've angled, I'm not that worried, so I can focus on taking down this cruiser. Of course, when you're engaging cruisers, by the way, you have to hit those citadels. You absolutely have to. If you don't hit the citadels, they will kill you with HE and fire before you have a chance to react. In this particular case there, I did manage to land a citadel hit onto the Atlanta. 14,000 HP went away. The Atlanta all of a sudden is down to 6,000, so he also has to play a little bit more conservatively. But take a look. I mean, as he's raining fire on me, look at the damage that's popping up. 500, 700, 800, 2,000 even, and it's extremely fast. Well, my next salvo is going to get me almost nowhere. Watch this. Salvo out. That's pretty close to a full salvo. Watch this. 3 hits, 2,000 damage. That's what that Atlanta was able to do with essentially 1 turret's worth of HE when it hit into a good spot. So that was just utterly insane for me. I'm still not worried about the battleship, because again, as long as I'm angled and my armor is angled to those battleships, they have no real way of penetrating me. 12 and 14-inch guns don't do that much to a Colorado. But that Atlanta, absolutely had to kill him. And of course, I do save this last salvo there. Full salvo out. 12-ish kilometers, still good. See the dispersion, still not crazy. And I do manage to bag myself the kill, and it's with a citadel hit. Okay, so let's take a look at a battle where you've got to fight things of a higher tier. For example, battleships like the Yankee or the North Carolina, or even just equal tier battleships like the Colorado and the Nagato. The same rules still apply in this particular engagement. Get close, get within that brawling zone, and then use the power of your guns to get those citadel hits. So in that engagement against that Colorado there, managed to get myself a citadel and a couple of hits, 17,000 damage. Quite substantial, considering the Colorado, as I mentioned before, only has 50,000 HP. So taking 17,000 off is a huge chunk of HP to lose. Furthermore, if you take a look at this next shot there, even though it was just with the rear guns, I'm going to land about 2 hits. 2 shell hits, but take a look at that. That's 7,800 damage on only 2 hits. And so that's good damage. It's really, really good damage. Take a look at the map. There is an Atago and a Magi, there's a DD, and they're all coming down the 8 line. So once again, I'm within that brawling range. I'm 5 kilometers. At this range, if that Amagi or the Atago show me a broadside and my shells don't go a little crazy, I should be able to do tremendous amounts of damage. Take a look there. That salvo was a little crazy. You can see that dispersion was a little nuts. Sometimes it still happens. Not much you can do with it. It's just part of playing the Colorado. But the next salvo against the Amagi is going to be glorious. And that's because, take a look at the range. 5 kilometers. This is where dispersion is actually quite nice. Also, look at that. I'm reasonably angled, so when the Amagi took a full salvo against me, yes, I did take some penetration damage, but it was okay. I mean, it was only 11,000 damage. Compared to what I'm going to be dishing out right here, that was nothing. That Amagi right now, got 37,000 HP. 31,300 damage. HP disappears off the Amagi, followed by another hit at the end there for 4,000. Amagi has no HP, easily finished off by everything else around him. As you can tell, I'm still maintaining angle. There you go. See it? That one only incapacitated one of my turrets, no actual damage taken. The Colorado does have reasonably good armor. Its armor can actually protect the ship from 16-inch shellfire. So that is something that, if you're playing the Colorado, you have to know how to use. That protection from other battleships' shells, keep yourself alive, and the longer you stay alive, the longer you can brawl. The longer you can brawl, yeah, the better your chances are to do good damage. Even in this rather short engagement, starting with the Colorado and then the Amagi, even just those 2 ships that I managed to shoot, I already did quite substantial amounts of damage. And had I even been sunk right here in this particular time in the battle, I would have already attained a reasonably good amount of experience for my efforts. One last thing that I have to point out. If you're in a Colorado, the biggest threat to you is, yes, like of course if you're running to higher tier battleships, of course the threat is from the higher tier battleships. But if you're in a battle where it's mostly around your tier 7, tier 8, the biggest threat might actually be cruisers, as I found that cruisers spamming HE can do tremendous amounts of damage. So getting close has its perils. The cruisers with their rapid fire guns are able to hit you quickly and do a lot of damage. Even in the last clip with the Atlanta, you saw that. In this particular case there, my first salvo against the Pentacle, and this is RNG. Beautiful salvo. Some shells just went a little bit high. Good. None of the hits I was looking for. Only did 4,000 damage. But on the flip side, that Pensacola fired an HE salvo back at me and did 4,000 damage with an HE salvo. So you're going to have moments where that does make you kind of angry. But don't fret. You do have weapons at your disposal. Remember, as a battleship, especially something like a Colorado, your shells have significant penetrative power, so a cruiser can't really angle against you. The only thing a cruiser can do is it can dodge, but it can't angle against your shells. And second, your alpha damage is massive. Get one citadel and a cruiser's HP just disappears. So that's something that you have to keep in mind. If you're being engaged by a cruiser, remember, try to close that range, get to a point where your dispersion is controllable, fire, get those citadel hits, and wipe the cruisers out as quickly as possible before their damage over time is able to wreck you. Remember, battleships, high alpha damage, low DOT, while the cruisers have high DOT, low alpha, so keep that in mind. So, to sum it up, if you want to do well in a Colorado, always remember, get close, get personal, stay as angled as possible, and use your really powerful guns to try to get as many citadel hits as you can. And that's all, folks, for this review on the Colorado. I hope it has been helpful. I hope you're able to take something from this video and use it in your actual battles and do well with this particular ship. I know she's still a struggle sometimes, but hopefully you will see an increase to your damage and your experience gain. Aside from all that, if you like what I'm doing and you want to see more ship reviews, don't forget to like and sub. And if you want to see a particular ship review, leave the name of the ship that you want to see the review of in the comment section below. Aside from all that, you have a fantastic day, and I'll see you all on the high seas.